Good morning, everyone. We're going to take a minute to get everyone on here. So we're just going to take a second as you all join. Good morning, or I suppose not always good morning. Good morning from Arizona. Just give us a minute while everyone's joining. Right. So today we are going to be talking about housing for our incoming international graduate students for the spring 2025 semester. And so throughout this whole process, we are recording this webinar. We will send this out to you the first week of December. Unfortunately, our staff member who has access to this is not available until then. So we're going to have to wait until then. However, we will be sending out the PowerPoint slide and the recording as soon as we possibly can. So if today you feel like taking notes, feel free to do that. But again, in about 2 weeks, you will receive all of this information through an email. And also as a reminder, you can add things into the Q&A. Our team here will be answering that as we go along. So feel free to do that. And I just need to make sure one of our panelists unfortunately keeps getting kicked out. So I'm hoping to keep her in here. So don't mind me if I need to try to make sure that happens throughout today. So without further ado, we are going to be talking about housing. So we're going to go over just some pre-arrival information to make sure you guys do remember this on-campus and off-campus housing information. So this is our Graduate Student Initiative team. My name is Haley Cousino. I'm the Associate Director of this team, and I will let my colleague KJ introduce himself. And Christine, she's floating in and out of here, so hopefully we can get her on here so she can introduce herself as well. So KJ, take it.
Hello, everyone. My name is KJ Faruqi. I'm a coordinator here at Graduate Student Initiative team. Work under Haley for our team, and you'll be seeing me in a lot of events. That's my job. I also have office hours. If you need to talk to me in person, you can go to that to our webpage and get that information. But thank you and welcome to ASU.
Thank you. And hopefully Christine will hop back on here. Oh, there she is. Christine, do you want to quickly give a shout out introduction to yourself?
Hi everyone. I'm Christine. I am I'm actually an undergrad student, but I work with Haley KJ, and I have one coworker, Ryan. I don't think he's here today. But yeah, it's very nice to meet you all, and I hope to see you all in our future events. Thank you.
Thanks for that introduction. So these two are going to help me with a Q&A as I go along. I'm sorry, it looks like the bottom of our slide is cut off. So if there's any information, I'm going to read that to you. So just if you do email us, KJ and I have our emails here if you have any follow-up questions. But we do ask you to use your ASU ID number in the email and your ASU email. So that way we know who we're talking to, and we can always make sure we're going to the correct person. So hopefully Barun will be joining us. Unfortunately, Maria, one of our other global peer mentors, is sick today. But these are the faces of your global peer mentors. When you arrive here at ASU, these individuals will send out emails to you, offer to meet with you one-on-one, host events for you, and be a general assistant. So they are going to provide you information once a week throughout your first semester here at ASU. So just wanted to make sure you are introduced to them, and hopefully one or two of them might pop on throughout today. Next, just a brief introduction. I'm going to, as I said, introduce you to our teams that support you every single time we go through these pre-arrivals. So if you're repeating some of these pre-arrival webinars, you're going to get really you're going to remember everything I say. It looks like this slide should have been updated, which I thought I did, but we do have our Indian student team. We also have a East and Southeast Asian team. Sorry, that's the second one that needs to get updated. We have a sponsored student team. So if you are a sponsored individual, that's for you. We have a Middle East and North African region student service team, as well as an engineering and polytechnic support team, as well as our advising team. The advising team works for everyone, and if you don't fall underneath any of these other specific categories, that's because KJ and I are here for you. So we do have people here to assist all of you, and if there's any specific regional, large population, or large degree areas, we have specialty assistance to make sure that KJ and I, we don't know all the answers. We make sure we leave it to some other individuals to know a few things. So again, as an introduction, this is the face of the ISSC. Some of these faces have changed since this photo. We have more individuals on our team than just this. And we are located on all campuses. This is a map of our Tempe campus and our student services building. This photo on the left is of our office, and we do serve quite a diverse amount of students. So over 100, well, about 158 countries are represented at our universities. That's very exciting. Our office helps with immigration information, employment resources related to immigration, and connecting you to resources and other students at ASU. So that's why we host these kind of webinars, is because we do try to help connect you with information. If you've been to our other webinars, this is a similar slide. This is just information to ensure you know how to contact us. And again, we are on all campuses, so Poly, downtown, West, and Tempe, of course, on the previous slide. So in the first week of December, these will be all sent out, so you feel free to review these then. Biggest thing is always look at our website if you have any question related to immigration and compliance, and or just to see if we have the answers for you. Our website is probably one of your best resources you could possibly ever find outside of making an appointment with our advisors and just talking with our teams. Okay. Also follow our social media. This can help with a multitude of things: advising, housing tips, social events, funny, hilarious videos recently from our team about the different things that our offices cover. So feel free to make sure you do follow our social media platforms. And the last thing before we get into housing, these are just some important dates. We're going to have these on all of our pre-arrival pages, just so we keep these in front of you as much as we possibly can to ensure that you are kind of following these dates. So again, these we'll go into more detail in our general webinar next week. But just so you know, these are things you really want to make sure you pay attention to. Okay. One last thing that I thought it does relate to transportation is that if you are coming to ASU, we need you to come to our welcome events. So they'll happen on all campuses. And when you do, when you register, you will be provided one free ride from the airport to your location in which you'd like to go. Hopefully your future apartment, which we are talking about today. So want to make sure that you are aware that you will get one free ride from the airport to your future home at ASU, but you have to register for our graduate welcome. These are the dates for the graduate welcome. So just so you know, these are the dates that we want you to arrive in the US by. So preferably you arrive before January 10th. But then because class actually starts on the 13th. So you want to make sure you are at ASU before your class starts, and Tempe has their welcome a little bit before class. So we want to make sure you guys do attend all of these. And again, our general information webinars will go into more detail about this. Sorry for any repeats, but it's important information that we want to make sure you guys all know and remember. Okay, now for housing. You can live on campus or off campus. We're going to talk more about off-campus housing today. So I'm going to start with on-campus housing. And feel free to ask questions in our Q&A if you have anything. KJ, if you don't mind throwing the link over here for the on-campus housing into our chat or Q&A area, Simply because if you are choosing to live on campus, you need to go on their website and fill out a request for living on campus as soon as possible. Most of the locations are already full, but there is a possibility, especially if you reach out to housing and you're really concerned and you would like to live on campus, you need to apply through their portal and as soon as possible. However, most of our graduate students actually live off campus. So we're going to dive more into that, but of course you can feel free to ask questions if you would like. Okay, so off-campus housing. A big thing that, thank you, KJ. A big thing that we have for off-campus housing, which I will repeat saying throughout this time, is that ASU does not particularly have any housing that we encourage you to specifically live in. But we do have an off-campus housing website where you can search for listings, places to stay. You can look for roommates, you can find subleases, you can report an issue, especially if these are houses that ASU kind of connects you to. We do monitor some of these areas specifically to make sure that we are providing information with secure housing options. And ASU does offer off-campus housing fairs. Unfortunately, it's not really something you can do while you're not here yet. This did just happen for our fall going into spring students on campus. So if you arrive here in spring and you only get a short lease and you want to kind of go to a housing fair in spring and find your more permanent home, that's definitely an option. But we also have a housing guide, so it gives you lots of information, much of which we'll cover today, but it's a good place to kind of dive into, spend a bit more time if you have any extra questions or concerns. And it goes, it talks about specific areas and the locations that you could stay there. So it's definitely worth going to. But also going on our student club's social media pages, Facebook pages, asking other students, so word of mouth, reaching out to realtors, so like companies that rent out different apartments here, reaching out to them and seeing what they have to offer is a really great way to kind of, go shopping for your future home. So with that, the housing fair, as I mentioned, happens once a semester. So this is an area where we have many different housing representatives come to campus and they actually talk about what they offer. That way, if you do rent a place and you don't love it and you want to kind of like go shopping, but you don't want to go to all these different apartments, it's a really great opportunity in spring to see what else is out there. Maybe you want to have a pool at your apartment building, or you want to stay in a house. That's what I've done. That's so it's like up to your preferences and you can kind of shop around. Things to consider, like I just mentioned, what kind of house do you want? That might impact the price of it, but do you want an apartment, a condo? Geez, what is the difference from apartment to condo? I think a condo is a little bit bigger. It's an English word difference right there. I'm not sure, but a house and an apartment, condo, or do you want to pay for a room inside of an apartment that's already been leased out, right? So there's many different ways that you can find a place to live here. So you want to kind of search through that, and you want to think of the logistics around what you're renting. Is it close to campus, which makes it maybe more expensive, or is it a little bit further away, but there's a bus that you can take, right? So you want to look into that. And on that housing guide, oops, sorry about that. On the housing guide that we gave you the slide before, on page 46, it talks a little bit more about that kind of information. So you can dive into there if you're curious about that. A big thing is budgeting, right? When I rent a place, I definitely look at the price tags first, and location. I think those are my two things. But you want to make sure you have a specific budget. What's the highest price tag you want to go to, or it's, don't go over that. You want to make sure that you have some wiggle room, a little lower, a little higher, but include all of your additional expenses. So check if you have to pay for trash and recycling, or water and electricity, or if you're going to have to buy a bus ticket. You want to make sure you include that into your total price of your budget when you're looking for a place to rent. And then also, sometimes there are extra costs when you move in. A lot of times in the US, we have security deposits. So that tends to be your first month's rent and your last month's rent all on top of each other. That way, if something ever happened to the apartment, they just keep your last month's rent and they don't give it back to you. If you're lucky, you pay through the whole, the whole year, and then your last month, they either give you your rent back or, whatever kind of your security deposit back, whatever kind of agreement that comes with you and your landlord. So you want to make sure you have the ability to pay for that. And some places want you to be able to show proof for like the first 3 months of rent. Or I'll mention later, they want to show proof that you have an income or enough money to pay for the whole year. Another thing with your budget, you want to find out those amenities. Do you have a laundry, washing machine in your apartment, or does your apartment complex have a place that you can go for free, or does it cost money? So you just want to make sure that you are getting the most bang for your buck, right? So getting the most that you can get for the amount of money that you're paying for. At least that's what I go for. Also, some keywords to know in case you are unsure. Furnished apartments means that they already have furniture inside the apartment. So you don't necessarily need to buy, like a couch or anything like that. They usually only come with, like, if you're renting an apartment that has like 4 bedrooms and it's furnished, they might only give you 4 forks and 4 spoons. So you still might need to buy items for your apartment, towels, extra items, cookware. But an unfurnished apartment, so if you rent an apartment that says unfurnished, it has nothing. It's just a bare bones. So make sure you consider that when you're renting a location, that you might have to buy furniture moving in if it's unfurnished. Also, something that is required by many rental places. So you want to check with the place that you rent from. You might have to have basic renter's insurance. You can set that up, or sometimes the location that you're renting from has that kind of incorporated in their cost. So you want to make sure you ask those kinds of questions. Of course, with budgeting, think about how many roommates you can have, how many roommates you are legally allowed to have as well. And then if you have a pet like I do, I don't know where my little cat or dog went, but I have animals. So you want to make sure you consider that if you think you might get an animal here or anything. And then ASU Housing always suggests that we tell you to have an emergency fund in case there's unexpected costs that you need to have covered if there's damages to your house or anything like that. So just make sure you are planning out your budgeting and everything's okay, because I know that can be a really stressful part about moving here is paying for things. So the requirements for apartments, so all housing apartments or houses themselves have requirements. And no matter what it is, you need to make sure you do communicate well with your landlord, or if it's like a property owner, if it's a management company or a single person that's renting out your house to you. So you need to make sure that you understand those requirements. In addition, oops, what happened? I'm trying to, oh my goodness, sorry everyone. Clicked on the wrong button. Somehow I clicked out of it. There we go. Oh, and it looks better. So you want to make sure you are kind of following some of these rules and paying attention to some of these things. So if you see the word guarantee or guarantor, that means that they require you to have someone else sign on that lease. So maybe a parent or a friend or an aunt or uncle, someone like that, a legal guardian, maybe if you're young, they want you to sign on that lease to say that you will pay for it. Whoever signs on the lease will pay for it in case you cannot, right? So some of them may ask for that, so you can decide if that's appropriate or not. That's similar with a cosign or a reference letter. I think the reference letter or just a housing reference is the most common. Wherever I move, for example, my house I moved into recently, they wanted to talk to my past landlord just to make sure that I don't destroy the houses, right? They want to make sure, just like a job, that I do a good job at living in rental houses. So if you can't have a referral, sometimes they ask someone to co-sign with you like a guarantor. Some houses and apartments may also ask for one of the following, or for you to provide one of the items: social security number, which most of you should not have, a student visa, so you will have a visa, that's something you can provide, or a permanent residency card, which most of you will not have. So you'll have to show paperwork proof that you are on a student visa here, just for them to, you know, make sure that you're not going to scam them. Essentially, that's what a lot of landlords are just afraid to get taken advantage of, just like us renters. And then a lot of places will also ask for a proof of income and ability to pay rent. So they want to make sure that you can pay rent throughout the whole year. So they might ask for bank statements and things like that. And again, they might ask for a security deposit or an extra 1 month's rent that they give back to you at the end of the year if there are no damages. And as we go along, KJ is doing a really great job of adding in all of these links that you can find out more information about this. Okay, so pre-lease, before the lease steps, before the signing the lease, right? Things you want to make sure, again, where you're living, what are your deal breakers, checklist, kind of looking at the options that you're looking at, maybe find more than one, review that off-campus housing website. So kind of those first steps: signing the lease, then you move in, roommate relations, rental issues, end of the lease. These are all parts of the steps of a lease. So we want to make sure that you guys are kind of considering all of these as you move forward. And of course, if you are worried about any security, feel free to have that conversation with your landlord, and maybe look up different reviews. Reviews of apartments are a really good thing to do to see if there's any regular issues. Okay, so really important thing that I do want to make sure we talk about are those lease agreements. So a lease is legally binding. If you sign a lease, that means you have to live there and you have to pay that the fees in which you live in that house. So if you break a lease, if you choose not to live there anymore, it may be expensive. They may ask you to pay a certain amount of money, or they still might require you to finish out paying your rent. It could damage your credit if you don't pay it. So you want to make sure you ask all those questions. You want to make sure you understand the length of your lease, and do not sign more than one. We have had students, unfortunately, that don't understand this, that sign like 6 leases, and then they have 6 apartments that they're legally renting, but obviously they're not staying in all 6. So you want to make sure that you pick the property that you really want to stay at, and then sign that lease after reading it in great detail. So these are the things that you kind of want to pay attention to. Leases may be for just you, or for example, my house, we have 1 lease with 3 people on it. So it depends on who you are renting from. So you want to make sure you confirm if is your lease for you or for your whole apartment if you have roommates. And you also just want to make sure you confirm the rental charge, right? So how much are you actually paying per month? And these are other items that should be written into your lease. So how long are you staying? Is it a 6-month lease? Is it a year lease? That's the most common. Sometimes there's 2-year leases. Or is it month to month, right? Is it a monthly rent, or do you pay 6 months at a time? And then are there penalties if you pay late, right? If you pay 2 days late, are they going to increase your rent every single day? Or is it a $5 charge, or your landlord doesn't care? You need to have those conversations and make sure that's written into the lease. You need to see if there's any move-in costs, what money you get back, if not. Is there an application fee? Unfortunately, most places in our area require you to pay just to apply. I don't think that's a great practice, but it's very common. I had to do it as well. Also, again, that security deposit, you need to make sure that's defined and written in your lease, how much you pay when you first sign in. Then make sure the utilities are also written down in there. For example, if you have a washer machine in your house, that needs to be written into the lease that if it breaks, you are responsible or your landlord. So even things like that of defining what you're responsible needs to be written into this lease. And then of course, termination, if you want to get rid of that lease, you want to make sure it is clearly written and identified in there. How early can you notify them? How early can you leave? Can you leave that lease? Yes or no? So it needs to be written into that lease. When you move in, here are things that we really strongly suggest for you to do. So you want to make sure everything's working. Check all the faucets, check the doors, make sure there's no broken things, broken tiles, holes in the walls, things like that. So you want to make sure that it is the way you want it to when you move in, and that your leasing office or the person you're renting for has a copy of all this information. And if you are kind of saying like, hey, there's the light is broken in one of the bedrooms, you need to make sure that's written and submitted to them. And you can ask for a walkthrough with your landlord. That's really what I suggest, so they can go through it with you and have them sign off on anything that you identify as too dirty, is broken, or anything like that. And then what I do, I take pictures. I go around with my phone and I'm like, there's a broken tile in my, on my kitchen countertop, broken tile. So I took a picture, we dated it, and we submitted it. And that way, when I move out, I'm not in trouble for that broken tile because it was already broken. And then bugs, cockroaches can be a thing here in Tempe and in Phoenix. So make sure you ask your landlord about that. Usually places do different sprays, bug sprays and stuff like that if it's necessary. Not every place, it's not necessary everywhere. So just make sure to ask those kind of questions and have everything written. And if you do have a furnished apartment and you have furniture, make sure to check that it is clean. If there's carpeting or anything like that, that's what you want to make sure you have. That walk through with your landlord, and to agree on what your apartment looks like as soon as you can. Okay, so this is not necessary, but it's something that ASU Housing really strongly suggests, is that you actually make another document, but a bit of an agreement with you and your possible roommates. If you're going to have roommates, sometimes you have issues. I myself currently am having issues. And so it's good to make sure that you have a document there that just helps kind of stand up for what you all agree in at the beginning. So it's easy when it is written down and signed by all your roommates, even if that seems dramatic. That is a common issue that we find with our students, is that if people are not used to living with anyone else but family, sometimes it's hard to move in with strangers, even if they're friends. So it helps establish some of those house rules. When do you want it to be quiet? Where do you store your food? Are you guys comfortable with having evening overnight guests or not? Things like that. Those are really good things to just put in writing and say, hey, we all agreed to this. And then you can move forward, and it just makes communication sometimes a little easier. Okay, so things that should also be included. This is just kind of a list. It's not necessary, but it's also just up to you. We just put some items on here. This is the advice from ASU Housing, and of some areas, like I said, quiet time, cleaning, maybe where you put items, who's responsible for what, how hot or cold you want the house to be. It's silly small things like that can really get people annoyed with each other because it's part of your personal living space. So you want to make sure that you define comfort at the beginning and you can all meet that standard moving throughout. So big reminder, you need a copy of all of this, your own lease. If you do a household kind of agreement, you want to make sure you keep a copy of that. Any photos or videos that you've taken of your new location, you want to keep a copy of that as well. It's good to put names and dates on them. So one, it's easy to find, but also then you can prove the date in which you documented these items. So it's very important to do this. It is not always necessary. Ideally, you have no issues ever with your landlord and your roommates, but some of you will, unfortunately, because that's how life is. Okay, so these are just some of concerns that we've received and ASU Housing has received from students. So kind of once you've signed that lease, concerns about moving out early. So usually this cannot be done without being charged a fee. And you might be able to sublease your apartment. So that means if you're leaving for the summer and you can find someone to stay there and pay rent, usually your apartment or house, your landlord, they have to have that subleaser sign another lease, like a subleasing. So it's really important to have those conversations with your leasing agent, with your landlord, the people who run your office or your apartment building. It's important to have those conversations and to see if it's allowed. Security deposits are also seem sometimes really scary, right? But you do have to pay them, and you want to make sure you ask if you will get it back, right? What is the policy of the place that you're staying? And part of your last month's rent might be part of that security deposit. It all depends on the rules and regulations of the location that you are renting from. So we want to make sure that you do pay attention to those things. Bugs is another one. I know I mentioned it, so please don't panic. We get cockroaches sometimes because we actually, Tempe floods some of the yards, my yard. And so when they flood the yard, cockroaches come up out of the piping sometimes. It's not that many. Personally, they don't bother me. But your landlords and your property managers are responsible for that. So if you do have an issue, you simply reach out to them. There are locations that have had issues with bugs. So again, read the reviews. That's a great place to go. Read other students' reviews, ask other students about it. But the fact is, Arizona, there's not too many bugs, but they are there every once in a while. So they're a part of life. Any maintenance issues, so any issues with your house, if a light goes out, they might ask you to replace the light bulb and pay you back. Or if your toilet is clogged like permanently, you can ask your landlord to come in and fix that. So a lot of times if it's in an apartment, there's actually like a portal. They have you electronically send it in, or you have to go to the front office. If you just have a landlord like myself, I simply call or text her. And that way we want to make sure it is on file. So you want to make sure you do end up sending in some kind of written thing identifying any of the issues in your apartment or house. And that way you have it on record that it was broken, that you notified them, and you are requesting for someone to fix it. And then those legal referrals. I know that's scary, but it is good to keep good relationships with your current and future landlords and or property managers, because when you move to a new place in the US, you need to have someone that says, yes, they're a good tenant. They're good at renting my apartment. So yes, you should feel comfortable renting them in your new place. Unfortunately, there are people all around the world that are not great to houses. And so when they leave, they make it damaged, and it costs the people who own the property a lot of money. So that's why they ask for referrals. Okay. So I've talked about this a little, but so I'm not going to go into so much more detail, but you, again, if you cannot stay in your apartment and you want someone to stay in your apartment for a decent period of time while you're gone, sure, maybe your friend stays over for the weekend. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about months, a semester, or a year. You want to make sure that is legally okay with the people that you rent from. So you have to check it. If it's in your lease, you need to talk with your property manager or your landlord. If you have roommates, you definitely have to talk to them, make sure they like the person that's coming in. And we really suggest you meet the person. If you're going to sublet your apartment, you want to meet them, make sure that they are a good and okay person. Don't just sublease it out to someone else, because in the end, you have the official final lease. And so you are liable for any damages from them. So make sure you complete that paperwork and have those conversations. This is just some extra information. It's nothing to be scary about, but it's there for you if you need to know. In the US, no one is allowed to prohibit you from staying in their apartment due to race, religion, nationality, sex, handicap, family situation, all of that, right? So that's not a reason to keep anyone out of an apartment. So that's not a problem. You can always, this is the Nuance and Property Enhancement Code, is from Tempe. It defines things like if there's a rule about an off-roading vehicle, it gives a definition of what that is. I actually looked at it this morning, and that's why I use that example. It defines what the word pet is. All of these things. So if you're curious about bringing something special or particularly different into your apartment, you can look at here for some of the rules and regulations for our local area. Also, evictions, they're not common. You really have to do something bad. And so this is just the definition of what it means. Underneath our Federal Fair Housing Act. Essentially, if you're a tenant and you're not paying rent and you're violating the lease or you're being violent and causing health concerns, then you can be kicked out, right? That's not going to happen randomly. That's not going to happen unless if you're doing something bad. So you should all be just fine. but just so you know, that's what an eviction is for. Okay, here are just some resources when we send this out to you in December. You can go through it. Something that's really nice that I find this handbook from Tempe, it actually has like a checklist that you can download for when you walk through. So like windows, doors, it has all these things. Some of them you might not have, so you can just skip over it. But it's a nice reminder if you're not sure what to look for, this can help you your first walkthrough to just check off everything to make sure you have a conversation about all the important things. So I like sharing this, and you won't need it till you get here. So December 3rd or 4th, when we send this out, it won't be too late for you. So make sure you can bring that along with you when you do your walkthrough. Our ASU student right and responsibilities are actually, so like our code of conduct is applicable. So it applies to you anywhere. If you are living with another ASU student, your treatment of that student needs to be appropriate. And so you can find out more information on here regarding the information about that. But it's all about being good to your neighbors, good to your roommates, being a nice person. So hopefully we don't have any issues with that, but definitely check out the ASU Code of Conduct if you are curious about students' rights and responsibilities. You should do that anyway before you move here, but also in relation to housing. All right, so I've repeated myself a few times, but I'm doing that on purpose because I really want to make sure I get the important pieces of information across. But we want you to do your homework. We want you to find the right apartment. We want to make sure you read all the tiny bits of information about where you're choosing to live. We want to make sure you read that whole lease. Sit down with a friend, read that lease like it's going to be on your final exam, right? Understand what you're signing. Keep a copy of it once you've signed it. Make sure it's like a safe place so you don't lose it. Remember, only sign one at a time. Don't sign multiple leases, and it is a legal document. So if you break that lease, there might be financial consequences. And then when you have an issue in your apartment, you need to make sure you document it and submit it to whomever you're paying rent to. If it's your landlord, if it's a rental agency, anything like that. But it's good to document it. And then the last thing is, it's challenging living with people sometimes, and it's really frustrating when someone might not be listening to you, or you feel like you're listening to someone but they don't feel that way. So it's a great place to practice good communication, patience, and trying to understand the other person. So being a good neighbor and a good roommate is just going to make your life and other people's lives so much easier. So it's easier said than done, but it is very important. So as I mentioned at the beginning, none of the off-campus housing apartments that are not ASU, they're not ASU. So we are not affiliated with them. I can't unfortunately give you a specific recommendation, and I cannot, ASU doesn't endorse any specific off-campus housing. We do provide a lot of connections and just make you aware of some of the housing. So your students that are already living here are going to be some of your best resources to say what's the best one. KJ and Christine, while she's on the clock, cannot tell you those things. She can always tell you that when she's not working for me. But reaching out to the student club, asking those questions, that's a really helpful thing. You can ask us what's closer. You can ask us, is there one on a light rail? Is there one on a bus system? But I can't tell you which one to stay in. And it's also off-campus housing. They have their own deadlines. Some houses rent always in May, some in April, some in January, and it is just first come, first serve. So you want to start looking now if you don't have a place pinned down. It does take a little bit of time to find the location that you want. And that's why we're having this conversation so early, because it's important to spend time looking for it. And then it is up to you to find the best place for you and to go through all of these things. ASU does not provide housing in this situation for off campus. So we believe in providing you guys those tips and resources to make your best decision. Unfortunately, this is, we can't help with everything, similar with our bank and phone plans. We can't tell you what to do, but we can try to help you make your best decision with the information that we can provide for you. So with that, these are just some of local areas that students choose to live at. They're actually through a poll from our social media. This is just some of the places that people have identified for us that they live at. Feel free to take a picture with your phone, wait until December, or just go on that ASU off-campus housing website. You can find all of those here. Here's some other places. Threw me off. Canvas, that's also a website that you're going to use for your homework, but apparently it's an apartment complex. So these are just some places, again, that you can take a picture of, or go on the ASU website and or ask some students about. There's a lot of different places around different campuses as well. This might look differently. So these are just some of the feedback that we've gotten from students through a poll. Now, the cool thing is ASU Housing has a whole department to help you with this, and they have office hours every single Thursday. I believe that's today. It is. So in Arizona this afternoon at 1:30 to 2:30, you can scan this code, take a picture of it now, scan that code any time of the year, unless if they update their hours next semester. You can go in there and ask questions. I suggest you do that. There is a whole department to help with campus off and on campus housing. So they are the best people to ask those questions. We are here just to bridge you to them, connect you to them, and provide any of the information that they have relayed over to us. So they are the experts. You want to make sure you go to this. I'm going to just keep talking for a minute so you can scan the QR code, take a picture, write down that website at the bottom. Okay, so when you are looking for an on-campus housing, we've already went through this, but it's just a reminder. What campus are you on? Make sure you're living close to where your classes are. What kind of rentals are you looking for? Do you want roommates? What's your budget? Your lease needs to be in writing. Breaking the lease can damage your credit score or cost you lots of money. And a big thing is we want you to be careful of scams. So I'm going to spend a minute on this. There are a lot of places you can find housing. I've found housing actually on Facebook Marketplace, I believe, is where I'm living now is where I found it. And it seemed like a scam. So I was sure. I didn't send them any personal information yet. I needed to have a video walkthrough because I wasn't here in person. I too moved without seeing my place in person first. But you want to make sure you read those reviews. You want to make sure the lease is legal and you read through it and you agree to it. And if it seems way too good to be true, if it's like $200 for a 3-bedroom apartment, it's a scam, right? So you want to make sure that it seems logical and reasonable, and going through some of those official websites really are your best way to make sure that is not a scam. One of an example that we had a student provide for us, that a scammer will tell you that they have a really high volume of interest in a home. In order to reserve it, you need to put a deposit on it immediately to claim it before someone else does. So I would suggest not to do that because that is a common scam tactic, unfortunately. So again, these are the resources that we provided throughout the day. So your off-campus housing guide, the off-campus housing market, which is that link where you can find a house, you can find a roommate, you can find all these different things of information. And then here's just, it's a very similar link down below. It's the listing. So it just makes it a little quicker to jump to there. But as I mentioned, you want to connect to your student organizations. The Coalition of International Students, actually the GSG, the government student body, graduate government student body, is a really great place if you're a grad student to reach out to. Some of our larger student associations, the Indian Student Association, the Chinese Student Association, those are also really great places, and so many other student clubs to go to ask for that advice, to reach out to current students that are living here in Arizona. And then last but not least, please send your housing questions to housing@asu.edu. KJ and I can try to help connect you. We can answer as many general questions as possible, but sending your questions to housing@asu.edu is really your best opportunity to find better, more fulfilled answers instead of KJ and I just sending you to them. That is also their phone number. You can call it internationally, or you can wait into the US. It's a good thing to have if you choose to live in a place nearby and you need help with questions regarding that. So almost done. So we can actually go over the Q&A, but just things to consider is transportation. ASU is a really great biking and scooter friendly campus. You want to make sure you do bring a U-lock or buy a U-lock. We'll talk about that in our general webinar, just to lock up your bike. But biking, scootering, the bus, the light rail, there's a lot of different ways to get to campus. If you choose to live a little bit further away, check if there's a bus route, or we call a light rail. You can go to Valley Metro. That is the local transportation that's offered in Phoenix and Tempe, West, Poly. They have buses and light rails in different amounts in each area. Orbit buses in Tempe are free. So if you do live in or near Tempe and you live on an Orbit bus line, that's a free bus. The other ones, we'll talk about it in our pre-arrival, but there is a student discounted fee if you do need to use the Valley Metro frequently. So I believe we're near the end. If you are coming here and you do not have a place to stay, I hope you don't do that. I hope you find a place before you move here or organize a place for you to stay before you come here. But there are several hotels near ASU that if you go through visit.asu.edu/travel, they do give you a small, I wish bigger, but small discount if you go through our website. You need to stay at a hotel. Also, if you have loved ones that are coming to visit, this is a great opportunity to get at least somewhat of a discount off of some local hotels. So without further ado, a reminder about scams. We're going to put this on every slide that we do. I'm not going to dive too much into this because I already talked about housing scams. We'll talk about this more in your general session, but please know we cannot get your money back if you get scammed, whether it is for housing or a phone call or an email. If anything is too good to be true, do not give any personal information. It is probably too good to be true. Private information should not be shared unless if you are like signing a lease on a house, that is when you might share information. But other than that, do not give it randomly to employment just offers, someone who just emails you like, hey, you should live here. Don't just give your information out super quickly and freely. So again, we cannot get your money back. You can contact us if you feel like you're being scammed. That's the best thing to do, is to get a hold of us before you do anything. And then Haley can be on the phone and be like, oh yeah, that's a scam. Or I can be like, oh no, that's real. Right? That way our office can kind of help. But you need to report anything to report PHISH, PHISH, at asu.edu. If there's any kind of, call it phishing, any kind of scams that are happening. So starting, I think, December 15th, we're going to have our campus course go live. There'll be more information on transportation and other things like that there that might help you with housing. We'll have other bits of information. So we just want to remind you through every pre-arrival webinar that this is going to come live on December 15th. You should be invited to join here. We'll be sending out the self-enrollment link December 15th. It will be on your My ASU. It will come out in an ISSC official email, so you'll get the introduction to this as much as possible. And then during your graduate welcome, we are also going to share this during that. So please make sure to join that for more information throughout your whole time here at ASU. Lastly, we have our International Student Handbook. This is just about other information, but you can find like where grocery stores are and stuff like that. If that matters, you want to live much closer to a grocery store so you don't have to take a bus or walk with your groceries. This is a good thing to find out, just other bits of information. It also has, different religious locations. It has information about banking and phone plans. So it's a good, useful resource. We just want to make sure we remind you every single webinar. I will end here. Because we want to make sure you continue to come to our webinars. We have a health insurance one in a week from now. And then we have a cultural adjustment one, I think, 2-3 weeks from now. And then you'll see starting next Monday, we will have a general session. You don't need to go to all three. I would suggest one of the general sessions. And we'll cover so much more information, things that I kind of hinted on today. And then if you have any more questions, December 19th, you can come back to us during the live Q&A and ask us questions that you're unsure about. So now, that took me longer than I thought. We've got about 10 minutes to go through any of our questions. So Christine, KJ, are there any questions that we feel like we should probably talk about out loud?
There was one question they asked about the details of the upcoming webinars, and I didn't know
Yeah.
the answer to that, please.
Oh, that's totally fine. Yeah. So a quick thing is, this coming Monday, general information session is going to go over like what to pack, what important documents you might have, a little bit more about transportation, and some of those kind of questions of like where to go to get things. So general information about ASU, but a little bit more detailed. If you went to our welcome one, that was just like, welcome, here's some fun facts about where you're moving. And then our health insurance, we will actually have health insurance member come to that and go through and share about what you're being provided. And then they always leave like a really good amount of time for Q&A for you to ask specific questions. And then that cultural adjustment, we're going to have our global presenters come in and some of our student workers and just talk about how life's going to be a little different, you know, tips on making it a little easier, things like that. And then again, that general Q&A will be a time for you to just come and ask some questions that you feel like we haven't answered yet. I noticed one of the questions in the Q&A, finding a roommate on Facebook group, the person's unknown. Can you tell me how to avoid a scam? That's a really tough one. I don't know if we have a specific answer for that in general, but I think, you know, making sure it's a real person, right? Maybe video calling with them, things like that to ensure that they are not fake, and they're not sending, like, you shouldn't have to send them any information, right? You would have to sign a lease together, not separately. So as long as they're not like trying to get you to sign a lease, you can say, hey, if I'm signing this lease with you, I need to talk to the rental agreement, like the apartment complex. I want to talk to the renting agent, not the person that you're going through, right? So you want to make sure you're talking to an official individual if you're signing any lease for them.
Also, Haley, one of the students requested if he can share the slide that had the ASU off-campus names of
Email
the names of
places.
places. Yeah, please.
Yeah, totally. So this is one of them. We've got Canvas, Park Place, University Point, Rise. It's on McClintock, the Frederick. How would you say that one? Rita at ASU?
Marietta.
Marietta, there we go. It looks like a town name that I used to live near, but it was spelled differently, so I'm afraid to say it. And then we have this other page, Union, Tempe, Vibe, VB. I think there's a Vibe too. Yeah, so these are all different places. I'm actually going to quickly jump. So this is not the most fancy way to show you guys, but I'm going to jump back all the way. And I thought about doing this and I thought, you know, why not? So this is the off-campus housing website. So you can actually see what it looks like. You can go here and like discover a lot of things. They've got really good resources here. Like this is a fantastic website. I'm sharing, my first house in Tempe, my partner was a student at the time and we found our home here. I lived there for 3 years very happily. So they've got a lot of different things that you can find. And they have a whole page just for listings. See roommates, listings, subleases, resources. My internet looks like it's going to take a minute, but just so you guys know, this is a really great resource to use, and it's probably your best bet not to get scammed off this. You can tell my internet's nice and slow. But while it's loading, are there any other questions? Yes, so there's a question about on-campus housing. Definitely, you want to make sure you go to the on-campus housing website. This is not the page that I wanted. Listings, please. Sorry, everyone. Here we go. I'll show this slide about on-campus housing. The big thing with on-campus housing is timing. So you really want to go on their website and submit a request for on-campus housing like today, honestly. And it's not guaranteed right now, unfortunately. So on-campus housing is definitely limited. And it is majority undergrad. I don't know why this is halfway full. But you can see they'll have different apartments. Oh, and they show it to you on a map. My internet's hating me, everyone, right now. Sorry about this. But now you can see, like, this is the ASU on-campus housing website, off-campus housing website. So I think it's really helpful. You don't have to find your future home on this place, but it can be a good resource. And then there's this roommate button here too. So you can look for individuals that make a profile that are looking for a partner to live with. So this is, I'll go back to that question about on-campus housing. You want to make sure you go to their website, and KJ did put it in the chat, the link to that. And so when you do go here, for on-campus housing, you need to apply now. And it will bring you to a portal, and you're going to fill out all this information. And that's going to be like your ASU login, right? So you're going to log in as an ASU member. And then you'll be able to find out more information. I hope this is helpful, showing you guys the websites. I kind of thought about doing it. It never looks very official, but I think it's helpful to show you actually the things that I'm suggesting.
Haley, I have a question here asking
Yeah.
that they did not receive the email with registration details for the webinar.
For this webinar, yeah, send us your email and we'll make sure. That's because some people you've joined actually after the email already was sent out. So I have no problem personally just sending you forwarding you the same email. I've done that with other students. So I'm glad you made it here.
Yeah, they're saying that they didn't get the email though. The
Yeah,
initial email.
you might
it
have
happens. Okay.
Joined a little later in ASU than our emails were initially sent out. So just send us your email, or better yet, here is my email. You can email me too. Okay, so the Google form, I had seen some mentioned a common laundry area. There were some unauthorized enter, sit and stay. So yeah, I mean, reading reviews of the future place in which you live is like a really good idea. I know I've always chose to live in houses because I have a dog that needs to run outside. But one of my really good friends lives in one of these apartments with many students. Sometimes they see me walking around when I go to the pool. Say hi if you want. But he has a shared, like, unsupervised laundry location, but the whole apartment complex is actually kind of gated. Granted, you can walk through the driveway, but I've washed my laundry there actually, weirdly enough, when my laundry machine broke. And it's just a bunch of students washing the clothes. It's open 24/7. So you just want to make sure you read the reviews of the place that you're staying at. So if like a ton of people are like, hey, this is like not a safe place, I would trust the reviews. But if it's a super common location that students regularly rent out and everyone's like, the landlord is not responsive, but everything's clean, stuff like that, like, make your best judgment call and look at those reviews. I think reviews are really helpful in the US. KG, Christine, do you have anything that you'd want to share? I know we're at our last minute, but if there's anything that you would want to share about this before we let everyone go.
Yeah, I think one important thing I wanted to share really quick was that if you do have to break your lease or anything like that, just keep in mind that most of the time it will not be affecting your immigration status. But if you are concerned about that, always reach out to ISSC advising and get that answer before you make a decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, it looks like there's no more questions. I really hope this was useful. I don't want it to be scary, but I do want you to realize it's very important to make a good decision and to do it sooner than later. We really, really don't want you to fly here with nowhere to stay, right? Please don't get a plane ticket and arrive here at any hour, whether it's 10 a.m. or 5 p.m. or midnight. make sure you have a place to stay. And if you don't know where you're living yet, please at least, Airbnb a place for a week, or get a hotel room, or stay with a friend on their couch. But it's really important to have a place to stay once you move here. Again, if you're going to move here and look for an apartment, have a short-term situation figured out. It can be very expensive to just rent a hotel night that night, right? Things might be very booked up because families are coming in and helping students move in. So it's an expensive time to get a hotel room, especially last minute. So we do ask, if you know you're coming to ASU, to figure out that living arrangement. And if you don't have your visa appointment finished and done yet, I totally understand that would be stressful to sign a lease, but you can start looking, identifying the places that you want to live, have conversations with the apartments, even apply to a few places, just maybe don't sign the lease yet. The lease can be signed once you get your visa approved. That's kind of also just a suggestion I would add in. All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And I hope this answered some of your questions. We'll stay on here. I'll stay on here for one more minute, copy all your questions over so I make sure I remember what everyone said. And for those of you who did not get the other links for our future webinars, I did put my email in there. I ask that that's why you email me. Otherwise, please go through our ISSC email for other questions, please. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And thank you to my team. Yay, Christine and KJ.